Hi, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on low-code platforms. The title for our webinar is Low-Code for Digital Transformation, Debunk the Myths and Explore the Possibilities. Now, low-code as a technology or a concept by no means is new. It has been in existence since decades now, but attribute it to the talent war or to the need of rapid digital adoption or even to the capabilities that the platform providers have built themselves over the past few years. The technology is witnessing rapid amount of attention and growth. These are some of the things that we want to share with you. We've been doing immense amount of research on this for quite some time and very glad to share those with you. We'll also talk about some trends that we are witnessing in terms of what the service providers are doing, what the platform providers are doing, as well as how enterprises are thinking about adopting it, and what are some of the issues that is leading to a slower pace of adoption versus what are the solutions to some of those issues. Very keen to share some of those insights with you. But before that, I would also want to introduce myself and two of my amazing colleagues who have joined me for this discussion today. I'm Alicia Mittal, Vice President with Everest Group in the IT Services team. And more specifically, I focus on our application services research. And when we talk about application services, it covers the entire application value chain from the development, engineering, to all the way to quality assurance, maintenance, and management. Of course, low code is a technology that is now cutting across the entire value chain and leading to massive impact for enterprises at scale now. So glad to share some of these insights. Looking forward to hearing your questions as well. I'll pass over to my colleague, CJ, to introduce himself.
Thanks, Alicia. Hi, everybody. This is Chirajit. I go by CJ. I'm a partner with Everest Group. I run a global technology services practice. Very excited to be here with you on this webinar. Over the last few months, we have done some pretty exciting research on the low-code market, and we are very excited to be able to share some of our insights back with you. During the course of today's webinar, you will hear from us on what are some of the biggest opportunities around low-code, how to think about adoption of low-code technologies, what are some of the challenges, and how to mitigate those. Like I said, really excited to be on this forum today. Let me hand it over to Ronak to introduce himself.
Hey, thanks, CJ and Alicia. Hi, everyone. I'm Ronak Doshi. I'm partner with the technology and IT services team here at Everest Group. And again, low-code for me has been an exciting journey. And one of the things that I now see the maturity of this market has been the kind of client conversations we are having, which is how do we build industry-specific solutions on low-code? And I'm going to share a little bit of that as we kind of move towards today's discussion. And that's the big message we also want to start the discussion today with, which is what is the big thing around low code that we're talking about. And as we speak to our clients, they are all building these massive platforms for enterprise grade and scale to industrialize the delivery of products, we industrialize the delivery of services, to personalize the experience at scale. There is a massive growth in the number of products and experiences and the channels, and also in terms of the number of personas they want to serve. And they want to create these hyperscale platforms that are there to scale and are agile enough to create those personalized experiences, and then create the entire engine from workflow technologies to automation technologies to the entire back office operations. How do we infuse the agility which some of these technologies bring? And that's where the anticipation we have as an analyst firm and our research is pointing towards is there is not just this demand signals which are very strong, but there is also a supply side, which is the talent that is needed to build these hyperscale platforms, which is seeing massive shortages. The combination of these two is creating a great runway for low-code technology. And it's becoming not just a technology to enable IT, but it's becoming a technology to enable business growth and digital transformation. So that is what we want to talk about today. And I thought before we get into the insights of the session, let's ask our audience and attendees a question on what we are seeing in the market here. And What we wanted to know from all of you is what percentage of your application development initiatives currently evaluate low code options. So the options are like you don't use low code, it's less than 19%, but 10 to 19%, is it between 20 to 29%, is it between 30 to 39%, is it 40 to 49%, or are you a low code pro that you're using it in more than 50% of use cases? So it would be good to understand and hear all your views on this.
While we wait for everybody to evaluate their state of adoption and enter their responses, Ronak, let's move on and let's look at some of the common myths associated with low-code practices. So we are going to talk about some of the myths before we move on to the other sections around the potential for low-code adoption. Can it be the next cloud? And then asking ourselves, what is the art of the possible with low code? But coming to the myths, let's look at some of them. Now, all of us have heard some version of the other of these myths. So, for example, does low code necessarily mean that there is very little technical skills required, or no coding is required at all? Or low code essentially means there is no integration required, or low code is only a tool in the hands of shadow IT, or only business users, etc. Now, all of us have heard several versions of these. My personal favorite is the one around citizen developers. Sure, low code helps democratize technology adoption, but we really don't see a huge momentum around the citizen developer movement in large enterprise settings in meaningful ways that fundamentally impact enterprise IT estates. Let me actually pass this around and have a little fun. Alicia, what's your favorite myth? What's the cutest myth that you have heard out of all of these?
Yeah, so no coding required, no integration required, and actually using it only for small, simple workflows. Essentially, the point you made around citizen developers, I'm a project manager. I need to manage some of my timesheets, some other simple workflows. Let me use a low-code platform. Total myth, absolute myth. It is being used for meaningful enterprise IT grade innovation as well. And that's something I'd love to share about. Ronak, how about you?
I would say this, no infrastructure support needed and this low technical skills needed. I think these are two big myths in my mind. If you look at any applications you create, right, be it a low code or using your traditional methodologies, you still need infrastructure from a memory, compute, network, server resources to make it run. So you still need infrastructure. You still need to manage it, and there is a cost to having an optimized infrastructure that you need to do, because you just don't create applications, you want to run these applications and make them, manage them. So infrastructure is important. And the other one definitely is the low technical skills. And I think this is one area which is again, to CJ's point, right, the point around citizen developer. So I think both of them kind of go hand in hand, right? You definitely need those skills to make these platforms work. And yeah, and again, I can talk about this in detail, right, CJ? So I think this will be interesting, because if you look at this question around, hey, you can have low code platforms in the hand of business users and democratize it, and it doesn't require technical skills, is one of the biggest myths. And it's also one of the reasons why some of the low code adoption might have failed in the early iterations by some enterprises, because they were thinking that, hey, this is something which can happen by business users, citizen developers, but did not happen. And we've been doing a lot of research. We've been looking at several skills across the spectrum. And if you look at the data that we have, we've been looking at skills like Java, you're looking at C, C++, and all of these other different technologies. And we're looking at the correlation between low code development. And what we have seen is a lot of the low code developers, they have these skills also with them. These are typically what you would call as full stack developers. They're using the low code technology to become, I would say, increase their effectiveness. They're able to produce a lot more and drive higher impact by using this tool. So it's an augmentation of what they do, but the underlying skills, if they don't have these, say you're looking at low code development to build a solution to automate certain processes, say mortgage onboarding processes. And if you don't understand mortgage onboarding processes, but at the same time, you also need to understand the language in which you are doing the coding, because if you're not understanding this, there is massive integration issues with other systems. You're trying to also create, use a lot of data analytics, and you're using some scripts and SQL and other technologies to make sense out of it. So it's not just the workflow that you're building, but the entire use case that you're building and the business impact you're driving. And hence, these technical coding skills, we do believe are going to be very important. And that's where the skills passport come in, right? If I have to be a low code developer, what do I need? Definitely, I need to know the tool, and but also I need these fundamentals of coding that I can bring together to create optimized applications for the business. So I think that's where this becomes important. And Alicia, I definitely want to hear more from you, right? Which is on these myths, specifically around, automating simple processes. I know you and I have been talking a lot about it. What do you see about it?
Yeah. So Ronak, as I was saying, one of my favorite myths or thing that I keep hearing from a lot of our enterprise conversations is what are the use cases? We know some simple use cases of automating simple processes, but can low code do something more as well? Can we actually consider low code for something more? And that kind of a myth is what is stopping enterprises or hindering enterprises from making meaningful large investments. A lot of enterprises, not all. So this is one specific myth I'd like to talk about. And let me give you a couple of examples to say, to explain why we believe this is a myth. So, there are ample number of examples, talk about Aviva, Continental, Medtronics, all of them. They have been using low code for meaningfully large scale transformation. Say Aviva, it used low code to develop a net new platform to modernize its entire call center operations. Continental revamped its entire financial application system using Mendix as a platform. Similarly, Medtronics managed its entire enormous amount of data that it was dealing with using OutSystem as a key platform. Now, across all of these, if you see, there are a couple of common themes. A, the scale at which these implementations are happening, right? 22 different systems being integrated in case of Aviva, and 10,000 plus users being impacted, or their workflow being impacted and modernized in case of Continental. And similarly in Medtronics, there is tons and tons of data that they were using, which is now being managed using OutSystem as the platform. And so the scale is one part and the impact is another. Impact, if you see in case of Aviva, accelerated the response time as a call center. That's very important, right? They're accelerated their service response time by 9x. Look at the quantum of benefit that they have achieved. Similarly, in Continental, developed the entire system in less than 12 weeks. No greenfield application development program can enable that kind of a pace that some of these local platforms have been able to enable. And then for Medtronics, the IT budget in itself got reduced by almost 50%. So all of these examples, and these are just few examples that we're seeing from the largest of the large providers, but there is a long tail of many other platform providers, some very specific to a particular industry, some more generic, etc. All of them impacting organizations and making meaningful large impact in terms of the scale, in terms of the outcome, and building large capability platforms on which future innovation and growth for a lot of these organizations is expected to happen in near future. So that myth of low code is only being used for simple, small processes, automating by some project leaders or citizen developers, that's a huge myth that enterprises need to overcome to be able to explore the potential of low code. And as we were doing a lot of research, we were exploring and studying hundreds of use cases of low code. Interestingly, but expectedly, we came across two key themes where we are seeing adoption of low code to be the highest. One, of course, is the customer experience management as an objective. So low code is being increasingly being used across enterprises to be able to enable better experience. It could be from a front-end development all the way to data management, all the way to integration, completing the entire value chain of managing an experience for a customer. And these could be internal or external customers. That's one of the key use cases that we are seeing. And then the second one, if you see mobile application development, digital product development, custom workflow development, etc., building core foundational digital capabilities of the organization is the second kind of use case that we are witnessing as the highest, where the adoption rate is highest and the impact also being highest. So yeah, again, that is, some of these things are why I said that is my favorite myth that I like to talk about and definitely debunk. So CJ, back to you as a question. What do you think what have you heard as the most common myth or something that you come across as a question from your enterprise conversations?
Yeah, thanks, Alicia. I think the one that pops up most frequently for me is the myth that you don't need IT for low code, and that business users can run low code platforms and build low code applications themselves. I think, yes, people can do some basic stuff with low code, but why I find this myth dangerous and problematic is because belief in this myth is a sure shot way of constraining low code adoption and not giving the technology a chance to succeed and scale. And the reason why I say this is because if you really think of a number of challenges associated with scaling low code technology within a large enterprise setting. So if you look at a number of the number of challenges, both in terms of the complexity as well as the frequency of those challenges, and the complexity and the frequency of scaling the platform, you start from the basics. If you think of just implementing a low-code platform, right up front, you need to ensure some kind of architectural fidelity with the existing and adjacent environments. So one of the most common pieces, or one of the most common manifestations of this, is integrations with databases, existing databases. How do you ensure seamless transfer of data? How do you ensure seamless data querying, right? And that is where you do need technical knowledge to ensure that things happen seamlessly. Second, customization is a big ask for many enterprises every time they're trying to implement a low-code platform. And that means you have to incorporate unique process-specific, enterprise-specific context through business logic. You need to integrate UI, the user interface, to the storage. You have to ensure, Ronak spoke about the myth about a zero architectural requirement when it comes to infrastructure. That's simply not true. You need to ensure that the platform integrates with the existing infrastructural environment and is also able to adapt to new infrastructure requirements as it goes along. Further, once you do implement a low-code platform, you are also faced with challenges around adoption. So one does need to ensure that there is meaningful support through tools, through configuration management, through deployment configurations as you go about supporting and scaling adoption of the low-code platform. Finally, if you think about scalability of the platform, the enterprise environment is not static. There is a host of platforms which lie adjacent to the low-code platform to support different parts of a value chain or different parts of a functional process map. And all of that requires significant efforts involved in integration. And that is when we do see enterprises spending time and effort on integration, that is when we see the full power of low code being unleashed, because that's when we get seamless processing, That's when we get scalability. That's when we are able to mitigate some of the technical talent crunch challenges. And that's really the path to driving large scale transformation with low code as a critical lever. The belief or the myth that low code can exist in silos and pockets with very little enterprise IT enablement, that ends up constraining low code adoption, and that ends up constraining the full potential of low code. So that would be the, that would be my takedown of the most common myth that I hear about low code platforms. Let's move on. So you've heard about the three myths, and each of those three myths talk about both the potential of the low-code platform, but also there are cautions involved in how to harness that potential. So let's do a little bit of a double click on why we believe low code is so interesting and why it's so exciting for digital transformation. Alicia, let me hand it over to you. Why don't you take us through this conversation around the adoption and the potential for low code?
Yeah. So there's a very interesting chart that you see right here. But before I explain that, let me tell you, as we have conversations with enterprises and with service providers and with platform providers as well, there are the question that Ronak asked as part of the poll in the beginning, right? How many app development situations is the potential for low code explored? Now, we asked that question as part of our conversations as well. And what we heard was 3 out of 5 application development engagements are where the potential of low code is explored. Now, with caution, I'm saying it's the potential explored, not necessarily low code is used in 3 out of 5 app dev situations, but that's a huge amount of huge amount of adoption or interest for adoption that is already being witnessed. Now, one of the reasons for that, of course, is that as we talk about the supply side, be it the platform providers or the service providers, low code is used not just as a platform, something that's implemented and applications are built on top of it, but also something that is used as an IDE for service delivery to enterprises. So that's another angle that not everybody explores or understands, that even as part of your traditional application services engagements, there's a huge potential to use low code for development of the similar applications and not just requiring you to adopt it as a separate platform for running certain specific agendas and digital transformation. But it has enough and more potential to infuse productivity, efficiency, and reducing your time to market when it comes to your traditional application development cycles itself. And what's interesting is currently, if we look at the market, despite all of these myths, despite the issues that already exist or the mindset that exists in terms of what low code can do and not do, the growth rate still has been somewhere between 24-25% for low code as a technology. And in future, as these myths start to fade away, as we see more and more enterprises getting comfortable using low code as a foundation for digital transformation, as well as low code for delivery of or for achievement of application services, that is going to accelerate the pace of growth for low code and take it to very, very high digit numbers. Now, to your point, CJ, you were talking about a while ago, right? That low code is not just something that is a tool for the shadow IT or for the citizen developers, but it has to be integrated, and it is already getting integrated as part of the core enterprise IT. How we see things currently are low code is sitting nicely at the cusp of these two. There are requirements both at the enterprise IT side as well as the shadow IT side that are currently being addressed by low code. And what are these requirements, right? It could be from, hey, help me enhance experience of my users. And again, like I said, it could be internal users who are building those applications, or it could be external users who are using those applications. It could be in terms of, hey, help me improve my productivity, help me improve my efficiency or time to market. And then finally, where enterprise IT comes in more strongly is low code being used for as an engine for innovation and growth, where a lot of net new prototyping, net new idea generation all of those happen with low code as the core foundation of enabling collaboration with the business users, with the operations team, as well as with the development team, and then being able to develop those prototypes before they are taken to full-fledged, greenfield development. So those are the various ways in which we are seeing low-code potential being explored as of now. But as we move forward, we strongly believe these two Venn diagrams are going to start overlapping even further, while the requirement of shadow IT will continue to get addressed by low code. So people, citizen developers will continue to use low code to address their small automation requirements. But at the same time, it will start becoming a very essential part of every IT stack as a new layer in the stack, or even parallel to the stack, whichever way it suits for different enterprises. But it is going to play a very important role from a scaling standpoint as well, to be able to scale some of those large scale digital transformation initiatives with low code as the key foundation. Ronak, you have, go ahead.
Yeah, and I wanted to make a point, right? Because what you mentioned was very interesting, and I wanted to, before we get too ahead, right, which is the shadow IT piece that you said. I think one of the ways also to look at is the maturity of the low-code technology rising, and the enterprise IT getting more serious with every other day to adopt this. A lot of the requirements by shadow IT will not exist, right? A lot of those will get addressed by the enterprise IT. So instead of merging, you'll see the enterprise IT kind of capitalizing on the all the other demands which they were not able to tap into or did not have the capacity to build. But now you're unlocking a lot of capacity thanks to the low code environment. And again, that's one point which is very important. And this kind of brings up to the, I think, the second element, right, which is, yes, we understand what's been the market so far, and how it is going to grow. We're asking for the drivers behind it, the inherent need on why do you need low code. And when we ask this question, one of the things that keep coming up is we want to drive agility, we want to drive business growth, we want to drive differentiation and experience, and we want to do this really fast. And as we want to accelerate our transformation, as we want to accelerate our time it takes to respond to customer demand themes, business demand themes, even regulatory demand themes, how can we be really nimble and agile? And that's what low code is allowing you to do. So instead of starting from the ground floor and then you're learning to crawl, walk, and run, low code is one of those platforms which is actually enabling you to start from the 10th floor and helping you run really fast. It has a set of libraries, accelerators, and set of solutions which are being built in the market, which are now so much of reusable components that you're starting really fast. And that's where you'll see in our survey results as well, more than 65% of the enterprises are saying we are investing in low code to drive acceleration in our business transformation initiatives. We want to be very close to the customer and the business demand themes and run really fast on that. And then there are definitely supply side challenges that we spoke about, which is talent shortage, not having enough technical skills. These are some of these, hard to hire technical skills in the market. How do we reduce dependency on that? And that's where democratization of technology and technology skills in some ways that low code enables is another driver that we are seeing in the market to overcome some of these talent challenges. And then the other two, I would say, are somewhat of my personal favorite because these are not explored yet, right? So these are the ones which will become very important over a period of time. The one on legacy technology. And let's look at from a platform provider supply side equation. A lot of the low code platform providers are born in the cloud. Technology providers, they are helping you build applications which are meant for modern architecture. They're helping you build applications which are more microservices enabled. They're more API enabled. They're more container enabled, and they are more interoperable, and they're flexible in that nature. So low code is actually eliminating a lot of legacy debt over a period of time because the net new applications which you're building, and in some cases you're modernizing your applications or rewriting them using low code technology, you are eliminating some bit of your legacy debt. And I think that's one of the biggest points. And I would say it's an under stressed or I would say, focused element of low code, which will become an important thing. The other is we are seeing the rate at which new technology is coming is increasing, right? We keep saying, right, the half-life of skills is shrinking every day. And this is where the low-code technology platforms become very important, because if they are able to create that modern architecture where there is components which can be rewritten really fast to meet the more modern technologies, and they can do that at a abstraction layer to the developers, it is solving a lot of the technical issues that we see and as we move from one technology to the other. So these are areas where definitely are lower down the priority today, but at least my personal hypothesis is these are going to become very important as we see these to be becoming bigger issues across the industry. So that's where I did want to highlight all five of these, and then also ask all our attendees a question today, because we've been discussing drivers. I thought let's ask the question around what are they seeing in terms of challenges or concerns. So if you look at this quiz question that is out here, what are the biggest concerns related to using low code for application development? And we want all of you to respond to this. Please select up to 3 of these responses. If you look at the hypothesis that we have out here, we definitely see scalability issues, unclear pricing, some bits of security and cybersecurity threats, integration challenges, not being able to find that good business fit or that good fit of tool available in the market, in general talent availability. All of these we have seen as concerns, but again we do realize there'll be firms which have not yet moved on their low code journey, so haven't seen any of these. But we would love to hear your views on what are you seeing as challenges on the ground out here. So as you respond to this question, I also thought let's talk about one of these. And this has been an interesting journey in itself. So let's, this is the time to go back a little bit and, go back and see how this market has evolved over the last, 10 to 15 years. We've seen low code has been an organic way of a lot of tools and technologies to evolve. These were repeatable items and tasks which they needed to do. And they said, hey, can we create a way where these can be done in a much more efficient manner? From there, it became that there are ways and means which we can not just do these for tasks, but we could do these for use cases and then for business use cases. So if you are managing an entire IT services estate, managing thousands of or tens of thousands of devices, and you want to provide them support, which is like 24/7 support to them, and you're using one of these platforms, which is, say, for example, ServiceNow, how do I create some bits of workflow technology on top of it, or some services technology on top of it, which is enabling us to manage these devices better? Was the repeatable task that came in, and then the business case or the user case was, how can we not align to service level agreements but to experience level agreements? And as we move towards that, low code became even more important, right? Be it in sales or marketing initiatives, be it in enterprise HR functions, in finance functions, in IT operations functions. And that's where some of these enterprise software as a service platforms embedded a lot of low code capabilities into their platforms. And some of these companies, right, which you see on the screen, have either grown these low code capabilities in-house or even acquired some of these capabilities and integrated into their SaaS platform. And what it allowed the market to do was, if they were already using an Oracle or a Zoho or a Salesforce or a ServiceNow, they are now also using their low code technologies to accelerate their transformation on these platforms. The other one in this stack, if you look at, are the workflow technology platforms. These workflow technology platforms are creating these horizontal platforms which were very industry agnostic to create process maps. They were helping you to create the nature of the steps you need to do in any action. It could be in any industry, any operations, any process. And over a period of time, they realized a lot of these activities might be very common. Say onboarding a customer on a travel platform versus a mortgage platform versus an insurance platform is very much similar. There are certain steps which are common. Can we now create these reusable libraries that customers can do? For example, right, ESG reporting that needs to be done. Some of these reporting that needs to be done is industry agnostic. how can we create common reporting technologies on top of these workflow management platforms? And that's where the likes of APN and Kissflow and Pega and others have grown significantly, thanks to their ability to pivot from a very workflow management technology platform towards an infusion of low code. The other one is hyperscalers, Microsoft Azure, Amazon, AWS, and others. They've been building some of these capabilities as part of their own technology stack and providing this entire low-code capability to their customers to be able to build apps faster, to build database visualizations, to do some bits of reporting and certain activities faster, and they're creating these reusable components. So that's another stack. And then there are pure play low-code platforms which came into the market by claiming themselves and creating this category of low code, which we today know, right? So the likes of Genexus, Mendix, OutSystems, Uncock, and several others that we're going to talk about. These are firms which are creating this category in itself to kind of scale. And if you look at all of these, definitely there is a delta between the share of low code deployments between these, and the history of these platforms is the reason for that. But for our clients, one of the things we are seeing is low code is becoming as important as automation was, analytics was, or cloud is. And I think the way we are looking at it is, how do you create capabilities in your organization to manage the low code capabilities that you have across the organization, across the technology stack? And we have clients who are building the center of excellences. They are building these capabilities so that they can work with several entities together. So definitely that's one big market out here. And I thought, Alicia, as I talk about these technology platform, one of the things also evolving with them is their commercial model, their pricing models, and what are the evolution in that. And I thought, who best to talk about this, because you've been doing a lot of work in this space. So it would be good to hear from your views. What are you seeing here?
Sure, Ronak. And just before we move to the pricing part, I think one last point I wanted to add on to what you said, Ronak, was, because there are so many of these platforms, at times it becomes complicated for enterprises to identify which is the right platform for them. Do they need an enterprise SaaS platform only? Can their current Salesforce solution, Salesforce platform, and the associated low-code capabilities can enable all of their requirements for future as well? Or is it something that they require to add on with something else? So in general, what we are hearing is, as Ronak mentioned, there's a center of excellence that enterprises are setting up, which may comprise of one or more platforms. One platform addressing certain enterprise specific, the core operation specific requirements, another platform addressing certain, requirements of the shadow IT individuals, or requiring them to use the platform, or enabling them to use the platform quite rapidly, and another one for addressing certain other operations issues. So there are combination of platforms that enterprises are using right now, which is a function of the limited understanding that enterprises have about the platforms and which one fits where, and also the capabilities that vary significantly of one platform to the other and what they bring to the table. So that's a key pain point as well, because it also increases the number of platforms and the vendors and everything else that they need to then manage. Now, coming to the second point around pricing. Now, that's again another very important and very big question when it comes to enterprises investing in a new platform. And just this morning, I was speaking to one of the enterprise leaders who said that, I am already invested in so many of these SaaS platforms. Why should I invest in another platform? It is only increasing my cost. It is right now, I probably might invest for 100 of my key users. In future, as my organization grows, if this user set grows to 1,000, what happens to my cost? And that's not a invalid concern. I'll tell you why. One of the largest platforms, as we were talking about these platforms in the previous slide, one of the largest platforms has a brace pricing mechanism, and then an additional feature or a capability-based pricing mechanism. And it requires enterprise buyers to go through hundreds of pages of pricing manual to be able to understand the model and to be able to estimate how much their pricing may actually, how much of commercial impact will it have in the near or the long term scenarios. Similarly, there are other platforms that have varying prices from an internal customer usage standpoint versus an external customer usage standpoint. Now, that puts enterprises in a big fix because if tomorrow external users ramp up to millions, their prices then suddenly will skyrocket. So understanding the pricing and from a platform provider side as well, having a transparent pricing is something enterprises meaningfully struggle with at this stage. Essentially, what enterprises require is to have to be able to calculate, estimate, and have a decent control over their pricing, which is at this stage a key pain point for majority of the enterprises. There are various licensing models that exist: user-based license, fixed fee-based license, fixed fee plus user-based license, and all the kind of permutations, combinations. But still, there are the commercial discussion is where a lot of meaningful conversations tend to stop. And that's where there is a need for enterprises to have a clear support and a clear view of what commercials does this platform offer, what does it mean for me in the mid to long-term basis as my internal as well as external user bases grow. So that is one of the key issues I wanted to talk about. CJ, have you heard of any key issue that is hindering low-code adoption at this stage?
Yeah. Alicia, Ronak, thank you. I think what you were saying, everything that you said was very insightful. And before I talk about this, let me try and, I was just listening to what you were describing, and let me try and summarize that a little bit. I think what we are really discovering in our research is that by constraining or by limiting oneself to low code's biggest advantage, aka ease of adoption, one actually ends up constraining the art of the possible. So if you think about it, it's easy to adopt. That's why we end up getting multiplicity of platforms. It's easy to adopt. That's why we end up getting the shadow IT issue, right? If instead we were to expand our mind a little bit and think about what low code platform really can do when deployed at scale, and think of it as something that actually accelerates digital transformation at scale at an enterprise grade, I think that's when we really start to see the magic beginning to happen. So that's just my quick takeaway from what you were describing. Having said that, let me come back to this page and your question, Alicia. What are some of the challenges that I'm personally hearing from our customers? I think if you look at this chart, it's a very interesting chart, right? So integrations, yep, easy to use. Deployment times, yep, easy to deploy. Training and support, most of the platform providers making significant investments there. Commercial model, yes, there's some challenges, but at the same time, it's relatively okay compared to very complex black box enterprise software. I think the part where I'm actually hearing the most significant challenges are around domain specificity. And Ronak, you touched upon this a little bit when you were speaking about some of the challenges and what also lies ahead as future potential is customization to domain specificity, particularly reusability across and within a particular industry. So I think horizontal reusability is something that we are beginning to see. Industry specific use cases and building out of the box solutions for those kind of scenarios, that's where I actually hear the most common challenges from a lot of the enterprises that I end up speaking with. And this is very interesting because I actually believe that this is a key challenge for the supply side of the market to resolve, because this is where the maximum potential for differentiation lies, right? I think standardization of the basic technology and some basic horizontal use cases is is potentially helpful because it drives initial scale and volumes, but it also turns it into a commodity or an utility. True disruption and true industry specificity go arm in arm in some ways. And this is a common pattern that we see across the history of technology. As technology matures, it naturally tends to gravitate towards industry specificity. And this is where the market is looking for more action. And this is where we believe that the supply side has to invest significantly in order to understand specific industry requirements and turn those into out-of-the-box solutions. So yeah, that would be my answer. So let's move on a little bit, right? So you heard about the potential for low code as well as the challenges associated with capturing that potential. Let's talk a little bit about the how. How should one think about actually adopting low-code technologies in an enterprise-grade setting? If one actually believes in the potential of this technology to do good for and accelerate digital transformation, what's the mindset? What are the tools and techniques that we need to look at? Ronak, what's your take on this?
Oh, thanks, CJ, for this. And I understand that the adoption journeys are complex and different, and there are several scenarios which each organization goes through. From our work and from our collective experience, we thought to simplify this into a 4C adoption journey. And the first step to this is let's reflect and let's contemplate. And it's important not just to look at, okay, what's our current requirements, but also look at what would be our future requirements. And again, once we have identified that, is where we need to start the discussion. Because if you don't have that discussion as first, what you're trying to do is you have a cool solution or technology in hand, and you're trying to go after a problem statement. And we don't want to do that. We want to definitely start with where is that requirements that we need. And it might be the answer is not low code also at this point of time. But the answer is, hey, there is an intervention that is needed to accelerate our digital transformation needs. There is an intervention that is needed to respond to business needs, employee needs, customer needs, regulatory needs faster. There are a response that is needed to reduce our talent challenges, or there is a need to improve on our legacy technologies or reduce the overall debt on legacy technologies. And we want to manage all the transformations or innovation that is happening in the market and manage this. If those are the drivers that we are seeing, most probably one of the answers is low code. So let's contemplate on that request first, understand the business issues that we're trying to solve for, and then get to a consensus on yes, there is intervention needed. Once you know that, is where we believe it's not a single IT decision or it's not a business decision. It's a collaborative decision which you need to make, where you're understanding that IT can bring a very strong perspective on what all is achievable with existing technology and how will it evolve over time. Business can then start talking about their expectations and how they would want the technology to evolve. And once you marry the two requirements is where you start thinking, yes, low code from a workflow management is a great fit, or low code from a very industry specific solution perspective is a great fit. Or in some cases, you might say enterprise SaaS platform. That's where we want more low code because we want to enhance productivity of our sales function, of our HR function, or whatever function you want to focus on. We basically are looking at it. So it's this collaborative effort is where you are now on a very common understanding of what is needed or what are the expectations, what are the business use case or requirements that we're trying to solve. So what's the vision and objectives, and also know what are the limitations that are there, both on the IT and the business and the technology side to enable this. Once you have this common understanding, your chances of success are very high. We believe the first two stages, we contemplate and collaborate stage, also lays the basis on several other things. I know, Alicia, you spoke about the pricing piece, right? And I mean, if you don't do these two steps better, what's going to happen is you don't know what's the expectation from the commercial model you want to look at. And that's where you are now into a situation where you lock into a commercial model which is not aligned to your business expectations and requirements of scaling. And that's where it becomes important to do these two steps. The next step we've seen is the most, I would say the obvious one, but the most common one, but I think the most difficult one in this environment, which is comparing. Given you know what your needs are there as an organization, the challenge is how do you find that best fit partner to work with you on that journey. And this is important, and we're going to talk about the work that we are doing, specifically Alicia's team is doing, in terms of assessing the supplier market, in terms of the platforms that are there at every stack of the IT tower across different enterprise functions. So we're going to talk about that. But there is also this cultural fit of the organization that you want to look at it. And then the overall technology fit of how it is fitting into the overall scheme of things you want to design. So that's going to be a very important decision to make as the next step. Once you've identified the partner or partners, because you might go with multiple providers, it then starts with how do you continuously deliver value, as well as accelerate the value realization, as well as maximize the value, which is where the customization potential comes in, which is how do you drive a lot of series of incremental step changes to ensure that you are fusing in the value of cloud, of low code, and talking about that to the entire organization. So what you're doing is you are celebrating the successes. You are making sure that everybody is aware of how low code has helped in one function, one area, and how then others can start looking at it as a potential solution. So what it also does is it creates a very virtuous cycle of adoption. It gets people excited in the organization to go after this. This definitely is a strong change management principles that we need to bring in, because it changes the way business works, it changes the way IT works, it changes the way individual developers work. And as you will do a lot of this, you'll realize there are different functions that are getting created. A lot of our clients who have scaled low code usage are also increasing their capability in terms of building product based IT organization. They now need product management talent to be able to create this bridge between business and IT so that they're thoroughly focused on the experiences that they're creating for their customers. And that's where this culture change that you're doing is not just stopping at this value realization, acceleration, maximization. It's creating new capabilities in your organization to further accelerate. So it's a very good virtuous cycle that you are building across the organization to scale this adoption. And having seen this personally, organizations at these different stages, I believe each of these stages equally important, right? Getting it right. But the customized phase is where the value can get amplified multifold, because you are creating this adoption journey from one area or a couple of areas to an organization wide. And the curve that Alicia showed, right, this exponential curve, we actually believe that is possible, and we are rooting for that, is because we are seeing this actions being taken, these tools and assets being created to manage this change out here. So that's where this makes me really excited in terms of how we are seeing this maturing in terms of adoption journey. I thought, Alicia, it will be helpful to talk about our research in helping our clients compare these different low-code platforms. Could you talk about how we are helping our clients do that?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Rona. So as you mentioned, right, after the initial contemplate and the collaboration phase is where this stage of comparison comes in as to which platform fits into the requirement. And that's where a lot of organizations are facing trouble to find the best fit. And which goes back to the point we were just discussing, right, that there are combination of multiple platforms that are being put together to create the best fit platform for an enterprise. Now, recently, just last quarter, we launched this research on application development platforms where we featured 14 of the leading low-code app dev platforms in the market. Of course, we evaluated a lot more, but these 14 made it to the final cut that we wanted to evaluate. Now, let me talk about some of the common characteristics of these leaders, what makes them the leaders. So what we are witnessing is, apart from very strong technical expertise or technical capabilities, which is of course needed in any platform that an enterprise is adopting for application development, these low-code platforms that are the leaders, OutSystems, Mendix, Salesforce, and ServiceNow, they display a very, very strong partnership ecosystem. And this partnership ecosystem spans all the way to the various technology providers that an enterprise can potentially have as part of their IT landscape. It spans to a very large network of service providers to make sure that the talent availability never becomes an issue. It spans all the way to even some niche specialist providers who are building domain-specific layers and capabilities to be able to address that question of domain specificity as a requirement that enterprises typically mark as something that they still want more of. So that huge system of partnership is something that's helping these leaders push through the market and push through enterprise adoption very, very strongly. The other very interesting thing or very interesting capability they have is a very responsive support system. I think whenever any service, any enterprise is using any of these platforms, there are n number of issues and number of tickets, etc., that get raised. The strength and the capability of the support system and the backend system that we are seeing for these leaders is incomparable. And then, of course, a very well-developed user base in terms of certifications of resources that are full stack developers, and at the same time now cross-training themselves on one or more of these platforms. And that's also something that's very interesting. We are seeing some of the advanced full stack developers now training themselves on more than one low-code platforms, because that's how they are seeing the adoption also happen at the enterprise side. And then another very interesting piece that we are seeing with most of the leaders and with some of the major contenders that you see here is a very strong marketplace. Now, this marketplace is what enables enterprises to adopt and then scale their adoption incrementally, which is the last point, Ronak, as you were talking about, right? How do you keep building on top of what you have achieved at the first stage and keep showing that incremental benefit? Those marketplace out-of-the-box solutions that are very easy to integrate and build specifically for these platforms by the partner ecosystem is something that that most of the enterprises talk very, very highly about. So those are some of the key characteristics that we are witnessing. In addition, I think what we are now increasingly see is there is usage of advanced AI-assisted development that is that most of these platform providers have started to use to further enable even higher efficiency and productivity as part of the development process for the users. Commercial models is something we'd say some of them are doing better, the others still have some way to go. But everybody investing and focusing on it. Again, multi-experience development, industry-specific solution development. These are all the things that we're seeing very, very strongly as the areas that the leaders are investing in. As we come to the section around the major contenders, in those largely we are seeing process management, workflow automation related requirements being addressed. I think we can keep going into those details, and of course, we are running out of time here, so I'll pause here and not talk about in depth about the major contenders and aspirants. Of course, this report is something that is available on our website, and we'll be happy to take anybody who's interested in deep diving into any specific platforms through those reports to talk more about them. But specifically on this slide, again, this was a very, very interesting analysis we did, again, around the same comparison as a key step for adoption. CJ, would you want to talk about this?
Sure, thanks, Alicia. So, if you were an enterprise and you were looking to build a low-code adoption strategy, and you were at the phase that Ronak spoke about, which is comparing different market solutions, right? Our research suggests that one should look at these 7 key factors. So first of all, let's look at the existing IT environment. What are the existing platform investments? And that's very important because failure to take a look at the existing environment is one way of leading to platform multiplicity and also bloated TCO. Integrations, no surprises. At the end of the day, low-code low-code platforms have to integrate with adjacent technology solutions. Commercial models, look for what fits your purpose. And one of the challenges here is the dynamicity between fixed costs and per user or per license costs, and how that plays into your future scalability and scaling plans. And then you might end up at different answers depending on how you envision your usage to scale. Again, very importantly, look at partner ecosystems for each platform provider. Um, Not just product partners, because those are the product partners will help get industry specificity and industry specific customizations, but also service partners, because as the platform scales in adoption, you will need service partners to ensure that things are in sync and enterprise architecture doesn't go out of whack. User interface, UI and UX, sophistication and workflow management, those again are very important considerations. Skill availability is important. All other low-code platforms that we have researched are investing heavily into this as they are in building out their marketplaces. So those are the 7 key dimensions that we think that you should use to evaluate different low-code platforms. The top 3 are your existing investments, integrations, and the commercial model. Partner ecosystems and user interface would probably come second in terms of weightage, whereas skill availability and component marketplace, because these are 2 things which almost all platforms are investing heavily in. Those are recommended to have lower weightage. And as you can see, there's a whole bunch of pretty successful, pretty exciting solutions out there in the marketplace. All of them compete meaningfully with each other across these 7 dimensions. A lot of this is really about taking the evaluation parameters in your context. So yes, good luck on your low-code adoption journey. That's mostly a wrap from our side today. And I hope you had as much fun listening to us as we did presenting to you. Just a small reminder before we take your leave for the day. There's lots of good stuff from where this comes. So please feel free to refer to our blog for a lot of insights around low-code technologies in the context of enterprise digital transformation. For more detailed insights, you can also look at our published reports. There's a bunch of stuff in there. And if you need more in-depth contextualized support for your low-code adoption journey, feel free to reach out to Ronak, Alicia, or myself. A couple of ways in which we would be able to help would be understanding of platforms and services partners, as well as in understanding how you can deploy them within your specific context, within your industry, within your environment. So these are just two ways in which we could support. For any other questions about your low-code adoption journey, feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to keep sharing our insights back with you. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation today. Have fun, take care, and thank you, Alicia and Ronak, for your insights today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.